Hello everyone and welcome back to Dreadline Stories. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. If this story ever makes it out to more people than my journal, let me start by saying it's real. Every twisted, impossible second of it. I've spent weeks questioning my sanity, running through medical tests, even consulting a priest. Nothing changed the truth, so if you're reading this or hearing it somewhere on a late-night channel, don't think of it as entertainment. Think of it as a warning. It all started because of a job. I'm a freelance videographer, mostly weddings, local business promos, the occasional graduation reel. It pays enough to keep me afloat and out of a cubicle. So when I got an email from a couple in upstate Pennsylvania asking if I'd film their small family reunion in an old estate on a private lake, it sounded like easy money. Their message was odd, though. They insisted they wanted everything documented. Everything. "We want to capture the entire weekend, even the downtime," the bride's sister wrote. "It's important for the family. You may find it unusual, but we'll compensate you well." They offered nearly triple my usual rate. I didn't hesitate. I drove out on a Friday afternoon. It was late autumn, leaves half fallen, sky a dim slate color. The house itself was breathtaking in a Gothic way. 3 stories of gray stone with gables and narrow windows, perched on the edge of a misty lake. A man named Victor met me at the door. Thin, neatly dressed, polite but cold. He told me the family would arrive the next morning. Tonight, it would just be a few of them setting up. He showed me to a guest room on the 2nd floor, told me to make myself at home. I spent the evening exploring, getting shots of the grounds. There were statues everywhere, mossy angels, weeping women, a stag with shattered antlers. As twilight deepened, the lake seemed to drink the remaining light, turning black and glassy. I caught myself staring into it longer than I meant to, almost hypnotized. Back inside, I found an old library, floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with crumbling leather books. I was setting up a time-lapse shot when I noticed something odd. Every mirror in the room was covered with heavy black cloth. I thought it was a quirky old superstition, until that night. I woke up around 2 a.m. to a faint tapping. At first, I thought it was tree branches against the window, but it was too rhythmic. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 knocks again. When I sat up, it stopped. I waited in the dark, heart racing. Then it came again, this time from inside the room. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, scanned around. Empty. But when I swung the light toward the wardrobe, I saw something that made my blood go to ice. The edge of the wardrobe door was open by an inch. I was certain I'd shut it. Positive. I inched closer, reached out, swung it open. Nothing inside but old coats and a faint smell of mildew. I laughed at myself, embarrassed, blaming it on the drafty house. Then, just as I turned to climb back into bed, I saw it in the mirror above the dresser. The only uncovered mirror I'd seen in the house. A shape stood behind me, tall, thin, head cocked at an unnatural angle, watching me. When I spun around, the room was empty. I didn't sleep after that. Sat on the edge of the bed until dawn, lights on, listening to every groan and sigh of that ancient house. When the family arrived later that morning, I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just exhaustion, or the eerie house getting into my head. They were a strange bunch, all wearing dark clothes that looked like they'd stepped out of an old painting, speaking softly, almost formally. They avoided my camera when they could, flinching if the lens turned their way. Except for Victor. He seemed to like being filmed, often lingering close, offering tight smiles. That afternoon, I filmed them setting a long table outside by the lake. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the sky like a mirror. I noticed no one would stand close to it, keeping a good 10 feet back, glancing nervously if their children wandered too near. I asked Victor why. He just gave me a thin smile. Old families have old stories. That night, they held a candlelit dinner under twisted oaks draped with moss. I captured everything: toasts, awkward laughter, the way some guests kept glancing at the dark water. Later, as I was packing up my gear, I heard whispers drifting from the lakeshore. I edged closer, careful not to be obvious. 4 men stood near the bank, backs to me, murmuring words I didn't recognize. Then they all suddenly turned to look out over the water, and in that moment I saw faint ripples spreading across the surface, though nothing had touched it. When they finished, they walked back past me, faces blank, eyes unfocused like sleepwalkers. I swear one of them had tears streaming down his face. Around midnight, I was reviewing the day's footage in my room when something odd caught my eye. In one shot of the family at dinner, there was a shape between 2 trees, pale, long-limbed, almost blending into the bark. It was only there for 2 frames before disappearing. I scrubbed back and forth, heart hammering. It wasn't there in the moments before or after, just those 2 frames, watching. Then I heard the tapping again, 3 slow knocks, this time at my door. I froze. It came again, and then a voice, soft, right on the other side of the wood. "Come see, we've been waiting." I didn't answer, didn't move. After a long silence, I heard footsteps retreating down the hall. The next morning, the mood had shifted. The family seemed tense, whispering more urgently. Victor pulled me aside. "We're concluding tonight," he said. "We expect you to document everything, even if it seems unusual." My stomach turned. "Unusual how?" He didn't answer, just patted my shoulder and walked away. That evening, they gathered by the lake again. This time, everyone was there, hands joined in a wide circle, chanting in low, shaking voices. I filmed from a distance, afraid to get closer. As they chanted, the water began to roil, though there was no wind. Dark shapes twisted beneath the surface, rising almost high enough to break through. Suddenly, the chanting stopped. Every head turned toward me in perfect unison. Victor beckoned. "Now it's your turn." I don't know how long I stood there on that gravel path, my breath fogging in the cold air, trying to decide if I should turn back and abandon the house altogether. But something, maybe the weight of all my failures at home, pushed me to stay. I'd come here to restart, to prove I wasn't as broken as everyone believed. Maybe that was pride, or maybe just desperation. Either way, I found myself climbing those creaky porch steps again. When I opened the door, the inside felt different, warmer somehow, though the thermostat hadn't changed. I walked through the kitchen and down the dim hallway toward the small study, hoping to distract myself with unpacking or reading. Anything to keep my mind from the way the air seemed to buzz against my skin. Then I noticed it. Faint, muddy footprints leading away from the front door. Smaller than mine, almost like a child's. I froze, every instinct telling me to run, but curiosity rooted me there. I followed the prints through the hall, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. They led to a tiny door at the base of the stairs, one I hadn't paid much attention to before. It looked like it might open into a crawl space. The prints stopped directly in front of it, smudged and twisting on the wood, as if whoever made them had stood there, waiting. I reached for the knob. It was colder than ice. For a second, my hand refused to turn it, and I almost laughed at how pathetic I was, too scared of an old house's draft. I forced it open. A dark, narrow space gaped back at me. I fumbled for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shone it inside. Cobwebs, broken boards, a tangle of old blankets. And then, deeper in, something moved, just a twitch in the shadows. My stomach dropped. I should have slammed the door and nailed it shut, but instead, I knelt down, shining the light further. It caught on something shiny. Eyes. For a heartbeat, I thought there was a person staring back at me. But the face was wrong, too thin, the mouth stretched too wide in a grin that didn't belong on anything human. I scrambled backward, slammed the crawlspace door, and ran upstairs to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I spent the next hour sitting on the edge of the bed, gripping my phone like a lifeline. Eventually, exhaustion forced my body to collapse sideways. I didn't mean to fall asleep. When I woke up, it was dark, completely dark. My phone was dead, though I was sure it had been nearly full before. I groped around for the bedside lamp. Nothing. A whisper came then, from right beside my ear, close enough that I felt the air move against my cheek. "Are you ready to come see?" I spun around so fast I nearly fell off the bed, but there was no one there. The voice had sounded small, almost playful, like a child's. Suddenly, the bedroom door creaked open on its own. I stared, muscles locked, half expecting someone to step through. The hallway beyond was pitch black, and then that giggle. Soft, delighted, drifting from somewhere down the hall. I had to bite my lip to stop from making a sound. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone again, useless though it was. Slowly, I stood up. I don't know why. I could have stayed on the bed, but it was like my feet had their own ideas. Each step toward the door felt like it pulled something deeper inside me, something that whispered, "It's all right, it's waiting for you." I stepped into the hallway. My eyes adjusted just enough to see faint shapes. At the far end, the little door to the crawl space was open again, wide open. I should have turned around, barricaded myself in the room, but instead I walked toward it, one trembling step at a time. Inside the crawl space, a pale light glowed. It pulsed, almost like it was breathing. As I knelt, peering inside, I heard the giggle again, closer this time. Then a small hand shot out from the darkness, gripping mine with icy fingers and pulling me forward. I tried to fight, but my body lurched on its own. The last thing I remember before darkness swallowed me was the sight of dozens of tiny faces staring up from the dirt, smiling, their hollow eyes reflecting that cold light. And then everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying on my back on the cold wooden floor of the hallway outside the crawl space. My head throbbed like it had been split open, and my limbs were slow to obey me. It took a full minute before I could push myself up onto my elbows. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. The crawl space door was closed. Not ajar, not halfway, completely shut, with no sign it had ever opened. If it weren't for the faint bruises around my wrist, I might have convinced myself I'd dreamt the whole thing. I staggered into the bathroom and splashed water on my face. When I looked up, I caught my reflection, and my heart stopped. Over my shoulder, in the mirror, stood a small figure. Its face was obscured, but its outline was unmistakably that of a child, thin and slightly hunched. I spun around. No one there. When I looked back at the mirror, it was just me, alone. My hands trembled as I gripped the sink. I tried to tell myself it was shock, sleep deprivation, anything that made sense, but in my gut, I knew something had changed. The house felt different, not just haunted, aware, watching. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard tiny footsteps skittering across the floorboards, circling my bed. Once I swear I felt something crawl up onto the mattress and nestle against my legs. I didn't dare move. I just lay there, rigid, until the faint weight disappeared. The next morning, sunlight finally spilled through the curtains. I bolted out of bed and resolved to pack. I couldn't do another night here, but when I went downstairs, my luggage was gone. Not moved, gone. Every drawer, every closet, empty. Even my car keys had vanished from the kitchen counter where I was sure I left them. Panic clawed up my throat. I tore through the house, searching every corner, every shadow. Nothing. When I finally stumbled into the living room, the camcorder was sitting on the coffee table again, humming softly. Against every shred of reason, I picked it up. The screen lit up with new footage. It showed me, sleeping in bed, my face calm, my chest rising and falling. Then, slowly, A pale hand emerged from beneath the bed and rested on my arm. The image was so clear I could see the dirt under its tiny fingernails. I dropped the camera like it burned me. The feed kept rolling, pointed at the ceiling now, but I could still hear the audio, soft whispering, like a lullaby sung by dozens of voices at once. That was it. I ran to the front door and slammed into it shoulder first. Still locked, still wouldn't budge. I screamed for help until my throat went raw, though I knew no one would hear me out here. Hours passed. The sun dipped low again. As darkness crept back, so did the whispers. I found myself sitting on the couch, rocking slightly. I don't remember deciding to sit. It was like I'd been placed there. My hands were folded neatly in my lap, and I couldn't seem to make them move. Then I heard it. Laughter. Dozens of children laughing right behind the couch. Tiny footsteps raced around me in circles. My mouth opened to shout, but no sound came out. Tears blurred my vision. Suddenly, everything stopped. Silence. The kind that feels thick and smothering. A cold breath brushed the back of my neck, and a voice, high and sweet, whispered into my ear, "It's your turn to hide." Something small and impossibly strong pulled me backward. I tried to twist, to break free, but hands, so many hands, clutched at my shoulders, my arms, my neck. The world spun, and then the floor swallowed me whole. When I came to, I was crouched inside the crawl space. My own flashlight lay beside me, still on. All around me, the dirt was disturbed, as if tiny bodies had been moving through it, digging. I crawled out, gagging on the smell of mold and earth. My skin felt like it was crawling with insects. Stumbling back into the hall, I realized something horrible. I couldn't remember how many days had passed. The sun outside was either rising or setting. My phone was gone. Had it ever really worked here? A sudden noise snapped my head up. At the far end of the hallway, the small figure stood. Now I could see its face. Pale, lips torn wide in a grin far too big for its head, eyes black and endless. It lifted one hand and crooked a finger, beckoning me. Before I could decide to run or scream, it darted into the bedroom. I don't know what possessed me to follow. Maybe by then, the house had sunk its claws in too deep. Inside the bedroom, the figure was gone. But on the bed lay a row of tiny, dirt-streaked shoes, children's shoes, each pair lined up neatly. My stomach lurched. I backed out slowly. Then the door slammed shut behind me. The window rattled as if fists pounded against it from outside. Whispers rose up all around me, from inside the walls, from under the floorboards, from the ceiling. Stay with us. Play with us. Forever. I clamped my hands over my ears, sank to the floor, and squeezed my eyes shut. But I could still hear them, see them in my mind. Small shapes darting through dark hallways, faces split by grotesque smiles. Eventually, everything went silent. When I opened my eyes again, it was morning. The room was empty. The door stood ajar. The house looked normal, dusty, abandoned, but calm. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my keys, but suddenly they were in my hand, and the front door swung open without resistance. My car waited in the drive, exactly where it should have been. I didn't question it. I just drove. Now, back home, sometimes I wake up at night and find dirt in my sheets, tiny footprints in the hallway. Once, I heard giggling from inside my closet. I thought leaving that house meant I escaped it. But I think maybe, just maybe, it followed me. Or worse, I never left at all. I don't really expect anyone to believe me. Hell, I'm not sure I even believe it myself half the time. But it's either tell this story or let it keep rotting in my head, festering until it drives me the rest of the way insane. So here goes. It started because of a girl. Isn't that how it always goes? Her name was Kara. We'd been dating for a few months, mostly long distance. She was from a tiny town in northern Maine, so small it didn't even show up on Google Maps unless you zoomed in all the way. I only went there because I was desperate to see her and prove I wasn't some city-soft coward. I wanted to impress her, to show I could handle her rustic life. I drove up after work on a Friday, rolling in after dark. Her house was old, 2 stories, white paint peeling like sunburned skin. A gravel drive snaked up from the main road through dense trees. Even though it was technically still summer, the air up there was a bit cold, sharp enough to sting my lungs. Kara greeted me on the porch with that warm, mischievous smile I couldn't ever resist. We stayed up late on her couch, drinking cheap beer and talking about nothing. Around 1 a.m., she leaned against me and said, "Tomorrow, I want to take you somewhere, sort of a local legend." Now, I'm a sucker for ghost stories. I grew up swapping urban legends at sleepovers, daring each other to look into bathroom mirrors in the dark and chant Bloody Mary. So I just grinned and said, "Yeah? Where's that?" She hesitated a second longer than felt normal. Then, "It's this old logging road in the woods. Leads to what's left of a hunting cabin. Folks around here say it's haunted. My brother and I used to dare each other to go out there at night. Figured I'd finally show you, if you're not too chicken." I wish I'd been a chicken. God, I wish I'd laughed it off. We left late the next afternoon. Kara packed a flashlight and a thermos of coffee like it was just another evening picnic. The trail started about 10 minutes outside of town, hidden behind a rusted gate that hung off one hinge. Beyond it stretched nothing but dark pines and a dirt track littered with fallen branches. About a mile in, the sun dipped low enough that everything took on this bruised purple glow. That was when I noticed it was dead silent. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of our feet on gravel. I tried to joke. "Haunted, huh? Looks pretty tame to me. What's the story? Murdered lumberjacks? Devil-worshipping squatters?" Kara didn't laugh. "Actually, people say it was a trapper. Lived out here alone, went mad one winter, started hearing things in the trees, seeing faces. One night, he walked into town covered in blood, saying it wasn't his, and they found 3 missing kids nailed up inside his cabin. But some folks think the cabin made him do it, like it wanted new stories to tell." I swallowed and tried to smile, but my skin prickled cold. The cabin was little more than a pile of rotting boards tucked into a clearing. The front door was gone. Inside, graffiti covered what walls were left, along with old burn marks. Teenagers had clearly been here, but it didn't make me feel safer. In fact, the hollowed-out room seemed to shiver with something old, something patient. Kara poked around with the flashlight. I stood by the doorway, hands shoved deep into my jacket pockets, fighting a rising dread I couldn't explain. That was when I heard it. The faintest whisper, like breath slipping between 2 lips right next to my ear. It said my name. I spun around so hard I nearly fell. Nothing there, just dark trees pressing close. Kara noticed and raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" I thought. I shook my head. "Never mind, let's just..." A crack sounded from deeper inside the cabin, not like old wood shifting, like a footstep. Kara's eyes widened. I whispered, "We should go." But before she could answer, the flashlight sputtered out. I don't think I've ever felt fear so pure. I grabbed Kara's hand and backed toward the doorframe, heart racing. In that pitch black, the cabin seemed to swell around us, breathing slow and heavy. Then came the whisper again. Only it wasn't beside me now. It was inside me, curling cold words up from my own ribs. "Don't leave yet, not when the story's getting good." I yanked Kara out into the clearing. We stumbled down the overgrown path, branches tearing at our arms. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Not until we burst past that broken gate and back onto the road. Only then did I turn. Kara squeezed my hand so tight I thought my bones would break, because standing just beyond the gate was us. 2 figures, same height, same hair, holding hands, watching us run, and smiling. We didn't stop running until we were back at Kara's car. Even then, we just sat inside for several minutes, doors locked, headlights off, both of us panting like we'd sprinted miles. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles went bloodless. Beside me, Kara was trembling. Her face was pale and slick with sweat, strands of hair plastered to her forehead. But what rattled me most was her eyes. They kept darting to the rearview mirror, like she was terrified something might follow us out of the trees. Finally, I found my voice. "You saw them, right? That was us?" She nodded. Her mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. Then finally a strangled, "I don't know what that was." I tried to start the car. My hand was shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in. The engine turned over, sputtered, then roared to life, loud in the stillness. I threw it into reverse and nearly tore out the transmission, backing down the gravel path. As soon as we hit the pavement, I stomped the gas. Neither of us spoke. I didn't want to say it out loud, to give it more shape or power. But 20 minutes later, when Kara finally whispered, "Why did they look like us?" I felt something cold slip beneath my ribs, like a hand searching for a way to hollow me out. Back at her house, we pretended everything was normal, or tried to. Kara made tea, her hands jittery as she set the mugs on the table. I paced the kitchen, kept catching myself glancing out the windows. Maybe it was just some kids messing with us, I muttered, though I didn't buy it. In our exact clothes, with our exact faces. Kara shook her head. "I've lived here my whole life. I've heard stories, but that was different." The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend the walls. I tried to sleep on the couch that night. Tried. Every creak of the old house felt like footsteps in the hall. Every brush of wind against the siding sounded like a whisper just beyond the glass. Around 3 a.m. I couldn't stand it anymore and went upstairs to check on Kara. She was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. When I asked what she was doing, she just held it up. She'd been scrolling through old photos from before we went to the cabin, just making sure we still look like us. She tried to joke, but her laugh was thin, brittle. "Not them." I sat beside her and wrapped my arms around her. "Hey, we're okay. We left that place. Whatever that was, it's done." Neither of us believed it, but we needed the lie. The next morning should have been a relief. Sunlight streaming through the windows, birdsong in the yard, a normal small-town day. But it only made me feel worse, like all that light and life was mocking how twisted everything had become. We tried to act normal, made breakfast, talked about maybe driving out to the coast. But when Kara went out to get the mail, I heard her gasp. She came back in, face drained, holding an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid. It showed us, not here in her kitchen, us at the cabin clearing, standing hand in hand, smiling. Except this time, there were dark hollows where our eyes should have been, empty sockets staring right through the paper. Written across the bottom in a jagged scrawl, "You left too soon. Come back." I felt my stomach turn inside out. I grabbed the photo, ready to rip it up, burn it, anything. But Kara stopped me. "What if that makes it worse?" she whispered. So we left it on the table and tried to ignore it. That night was worse than any yet. The house felt wrong, like it didn't quite fit around us anymore. I kept thinking I saw movement from the corner of my eye, shadows darting behind doors, slipping under furniture. Once, I could have sworn I saw someone standing at the end of the hall, a shape the exact height and build as me. When I worked up the nerve to flip on the light, the hall was empty. Kara was curled up on the couch under a blanket. Her eyes were red from crying. I sat with her, held her close. Neither of us spoke about the photo or the cabin or those things that wore our faces. But around midnight, we both heard it. A knock. Software delicate. It came from the back door, then the kitchen window, then, horrifyingly, from the front door, like something circling the house, trying each entrance in turn. I crept to the window and peeked out. At first, I didn't see anything. Then my breath caught in my throat. Standing at the edge of the yard were 2 figures, United States. Same clothes as last night, same smiles, watching, waiting. Kara saw them too. She grabbed my hand so tight I felt the bones shift. We didn't sleep at all. The next day I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone was playing an elaborate prank. Maybe we were suffering some shared hallucination. Mass hysteria was a thing, right? Anything was better than believing the truth my gut was screaming at me. But that evening, when we went to the grocery store just to be around people, I realized how wrong everything was. As we walked the aisles, I kept catching folks giving us strange looks. A cashier outright flinched when I smiled at her. Finally, an old woman with wispy gray hair shuffled up and put a shaking hand on my arm. "You two should go home," she whispered, voice papery. "It's almost dark." My throat went dry. "What do you mean?" Her eyes were full of pity. "They already know you tried to run. That makes them angry." Before I could say anything else, she shuffled away, leaving me cold and sick. Kara saw my face and didn't even ask. We just left our cart there and walked out. When we got back to the house, there were muddy footprints on the porch, small ones, barefoot, like a child's. They led to the front door, then circled around back. Inside, everything was as we left it, except for the Polaroid on the kitchen table. It had changed. Now, the photo was blank except for the words, "Not yet." That night, it got worse, much, much worse. We tried to barricade the doors, pushed furniture up against them, locked every window. We even sat back to back in the living room, clutching a kitchen knife and a hammer like idiots. Around 2 a.m., the knocking started again, this time harder, more insistent. It traveled around the house, faster now, like whatever was outside was excited. I squeezed Kara's hand and whispered that it would be over soon, that they'd get bored, that we were safe. Then we heard the unmistakable creak of the front door opening. Footsteps padded through the hall, light, playful. They didn't come toward us immediately. Instead, they wandered the house, through the kitchen, up the stairs, then back down. Finally, they entered the living room, and there they were, United States, perfect copies. Except their smiles were impossibly wide now, stretching up into their cheeks. Their eyes were shiny, too dark, reflecting nothing. They stood across from us, just watching. Then, my double tilted its head and in my exact voice said, "Ready to come back?" I felt something pop in my mind, like a fuse blowing. I jumped up, screamed, swung the hammer. It passed right through him, through me. And the grin only grew. Kara tried to run. Her double caught her by the arm and they simply blinked out, gone, like someone cutting a frame from a film reel. I stood there, alone in the living room, chest heaving. The copy of me took a step forward, close enough that I could see faint lines of rot crawling beneath its skin. It leaned in until our foreheads nearly touched. "Not yet," it whispered, "but soon." Then it vanished, leaving me alone with the echo of my own terrified breathing. I haven't seen Kara since. I've searched everywhere. Her house, her favorite spots by the river, even the sheriff's office. They all act like they don't know who I'm talking about. It's like she never existed, like I never existed. Sometimes I look in the mirror and my reflection doesn't quite match. Its smile lingers a little too long, or its eyes dart somewhere mine don't. I don't sleep much anymore. I can't, because every night I hear it, a knock at the door, followed by my own voice, softly calling from outside, "Ready to come back?" I think the worst thing about what happened is how easily it all began. Not with some sinister event or dark legend, but with a simple favor. Last autumn, my cousin Evan called me in the middle of a workday. I almost let it go to voicemail. I wish I had, because that call turned out to be the start of everything. He sounded strained, like he was trying to keep his voice calm. "Hey Mark, listen, weird question. Can you come out to the farm this weekend? I need an extra pair of hands. Some, property stuff." Evan and I hadn't been close since we were kids. After his parents died, he'd inherited the old family land up in Vermont. Dozens of neglected acres, falling barns, and a century-old farmhouse. I hadn't been there in over a decade, so hearing from him out of the blue set me on edge before he even finished. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He hesitated. Yeah, it's fine. Just something I want to show you. Bring boots." I drove up on Saturday morning. The first sign that things weren't fine was the state of the driveway. It was just dirt and broken stone, choked with weeds, barely wide enough for my car. When I finally pulled up to the house, I noticed the barn behind it had collapsed completely, just a heap of rotting timber. The main house didn't look much better. Paint peeled off in wide flakes, the roof sagged, and one of the porch posts had split clean through. Evan was waiting on the porch, waving me over with forced enthusiasm. "Glad you came, man. Been too long." He hugged me like we were still close. Up close, I noticed he looked terrible, gaunt, pale. His eyes darted constantly, like he was checking for something just over my shoulder. "You sick or something?" I asked. "Nah, just tired. Been working on clearing the old well. That's kinda why I wanted you here." The well was out back, past the ruin of the barn, near the tree line. It had always been covered when we were kids, a heavy stone lid we weren't allowed to touch. I remember our grandmother telling us stories about how it was haunted by old spirits. Back then, it was just her way of keeping us from playing near something dangerous. When we reached it, I realized Evan had rolled the stone lid aside. The opening yawned black and bottomless. "Why the hell did you open that?" I asked, uneasy. "Had to. Kept hearing things. Animals, maybe. Something falling in. I needed to see if it was clogged." He sounded defensive, like he was already preparing an argument. Then he crouched near the opening, listening. "You hear it?" he whispered. I strained, holding my breath. For a moment there was nothing, just the sigh of wind through trees. Then, a faint sound, almost like someone whispering down there. "Probably water running under rocks," I muttered, trying to convince myself more than him. "It's not water. Been hearing it at night. Voices. Sometimes I see..." He cut himself off, shaking his head. Anyway, I started digging around it. Found something. Behind the well he'd been shoveling. A fresh pit gaped open, dirt piled high around it. Evan dropped down into the hole like it was nothing, then stood aside so I could see. Something wooden was half buried there. An old chest, maybe the size of a large toolbox, dark with age and damp. It was covered in strange carved symbols I didn't recognize. Looked hand-done, uneven, rough. "Found it 2 nights ago," Evan said. "But I can't. I don't know. I thought I could get it out myself." A smell wafted up from it, sour, almost metallic. I gagged. "Jesus, Evan, this looks like someone's idea of a coffin." He shivered, hugging himself. "Yeah, I know. I was hoping you'd help me open it." Every instinct I had screamed no, but he looked so desperate, like he hadn't slept in days. I found myself nodding. We climbed out and fetched crowbars from his shed. As soon as I touched the box, I felt a cold jolt run up my arm. Evan didn't seem to notice. Together we pried the lid. It cracked open with a sound like splitting bone. Inside was a bundle wrapped in what might have once been cloth, now black, greasy, and crawling with tiny worms. A sickly wet rot rose up, choking me, but something glinted beneath the fabric. I used the crowbar to nudge it aside. Metal, dozens of small bronze discs, like old coins, each engraved with a weird spiral pattern. They were packed in tight, surrounding a central object, something that looked like a small, crude statue. I leaned closer. It was shaped vaguely like a person, but with too many limbs, the face an obscene swirl of pits and gouges. As I stared, my stomach twisted, like the ground itself had shifted under me. "Jesus, Evan, we shouldn't..." That's when he picked it up. The moment Evan's hands closed around the statue, the air seemed to pulse. I actually felt it, like pressure popping in my ears. The trees around us shivered, leaves hissing. Evan let out a choked sound. He dropped the statue immediately, but it was too late. His nose was bleeding. He wiped it on his sleeve, looking more annoyed than scared. Guess I nicked myself. We can clean this up in the house. I didn't want to touch the thing again, so I kicked the chest closed. We left it by the pit. Back inside, Evan went to the bathroom to clean up. I wandered into the kitchen, trying to calm down. The smell of that rotten cloth still clung to me. I turned the sink on to wash my hands, but what came out wasn't water. It was thick, dark, smelled of rust and earth. Blood. I staggered back, heart racing, trying to make sense of it. Then it was just water again. Clear, cold. My hands were clean. That night, Evan insisted I stay over. He seemed weirdly cheerful, like digging up that box had lifted a weight. I didn't trust it. I offered to sleep on the couch, too spooked to even think about the guest bedroom. It was after midnight when I woke up to the sound of something moving through the house. Heavy, dragging footsteps. I called out for Evan. No answer. Then I heard it, whispering, just like by the well. This time it was clearer, though I still couldn't understand the words. It moved through the hall outside the living room, growing louder, closer. I held my breath, clutching the blanket like a shield. The front door opened slowly, hinges screaming. The cold night air flooded in. Then silence. I waited an hour before daring to check. The door was ajar. Evan was gone. I found muddy footprints leading back toward the well. I followed them with a flashlight. The night was impossibly dark. No moon, no stars, just a smothering blackness. When I reached the pit, the box was open again, empty. I swung the light around wildly. That's when I saw Evan. He was standing at the edge of the trees, shirtless despite the cold, his arms hanging limp. His eyes caught the beam, milky, wrong. Behind him, something moved, something tall, draped in shadow, with too many joints. It bent low, whispering in Evan's ear. He nodded like he understood, then he turned and walked into the trees, that thing gliding after him. I ran back to the house and locked myself inside. I don't remember sleeping, just the ticking of the old clock, the creak of floorboards settling under invisible weight, and the occasional scrape of nails along the outside walls. I'm back home in the city, trying to pretend it was all a nightmare, but I know it wasn't. I keep finding small bronze discs on my doorstep, sometimes on my pillow when I wake up. Last night I heard whispering again, this time from inside my closet, and when I checked the mirror this morning, my eyes looked a little duller, a little less like mine, like Evan's did. It's strange how quickly you can adjust to living in fear. The first week back in my apartment, I jumped at every shadow, left every light on, and kept a baseball bat by the bed. But after a while, terror dulls. You grow tired. You tell yourself it was stress, hallucination, anything but what you know deep down to be true. That's how it gets you. It waits. And in waiting, it becomes part of you. About 2 weeks after I saw Evan vanish into the woods with that towering shape, I got a letter. No stamp, no return address, just my name on the envelope, written in a shaky hand. I opened it on the kitchen counter, stomach coiling like a nest of snakes. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Evan standing in front of the well. His shirt was torn, skin smeared with dark streaks. His mouth was open in a grin that didn't reach his eyes. In his hands, he held that grotesque little statue, cradling it against his chest like it was precious. Scrawled across the bottom in faint pencil were 3 words, "It's your turn." My knees went out. I sat on the cold tile floor, staring at the picture until tears blurred it. Because the worst part wasn't Evan or the words. It was the shape behind him, almost invisible in the trees, but there if you looked close. A long, crooked silhouette bending toward the camera, watching me even then. After that, the nights changed. I started waking to noises inside the apartment, not normal creaks or the buzz of pipes, but soft thuds, dragging sounds like someone pulling heavy burlap sacks down my hallway. Sometimes I heard whispers through the vents, murmuring a language I didn't understand. Then there were the coins. Every morning I found more of those strange bronze discs. At first, just one or two by the front door. Then they appeared inside, on my kitchen counter, my bathroom sink, balanced carefully on my pillow, always arranged in a little spiral. I swept them up and threw them away, but they kept returning. One night, I even heard them drop, one by one, onto my dresser. When I turned on the lamp, nothing was there, until I pulled back the bedsheets and found a neat pile, still warm, as if just placed. A month in, I noticed something wrong with my hands. Veins had risen up, dark and swollen. At first I thought it was just stress, bad circulation, but then they started branching in unnatural ways, curling over the backs of my hands in patterns that reminded me too much of the symbols carved on that buried box. They itched constantly. I scratched them raw until they bled. At night, I'd wake to find myself digging at them in my sleep, nails caked in dried red. One morning I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, tracing the lines. If I followed them from fingertip to wrist, they seemed to spiral tighter and tighter, drawing toward some unseen point deep under the skin. When I pressed down, something shifted, something that felt separate from me. I vomited in the sink. It was nearly 2 months since Vermont when the pounding started. 3 sharp knocks on my apartment door at 3:13 a.m. I stayed frozen in bed, listening. Another set of knocks came, slower, more deliberate. I finally crept to the peephole. My breath fogged the brass as I leaned in. Evan stood in the hall. His clothes were tattered, his skin ashy, and his eyes, Christ, his eyes were wrong, milky white with spiderweb veins. They stared straight ahead, not blinking. He lifted a hand and pressed something to my door. When he pulled away, I saw it was another photograph, held there by a tack driven right into the wood. I waited a full hour before opening the door. The hall was empty. Only the photo remained. It showed me, asleep in my bed, the blankets twisted around me. The angle was from my closet. Written across the bottom, "Closer now." The dreams began after that. Every night I found myself back by the well, the woods pressed close, their branches forming dark arches overhead. Evan stood at the edge, holding the statue. Behind him shapes moved, too tall, too thin, with heads that bent and turned unnaturally. He would look at me, smile that broken smile, and say, "Come see what waits. It's so much quieter here." Then he'd lean back and fall into the well. No splash, just endless falling, vanishing into the black. I'd wake choking on the taste of earth. My sheets are full of grit. My mouth is packed with soil. Reality itself started to break down. I'd be brushing my teeth and see movement behind me in the mirror, something crawling along the ceiling. When I spun around, nothing was there. The faucet would sometimes cough up water so dark it looked like oil, only to run clear a second later. Worse was the hallway outside my apartment. Some nights it was too long, stretched out, doors multiplied down impossible distances, each one slightly ajar, whispering to me. Other times it was too short, just a blank wall where the elevator should be. Once I stepped out to take the trash and found myself in the woods instead of the carpeted hall. The trees crowded close, breathless, branches scratching at my shoulders. When I turned back, my apartment door was there, set into the side of an oak. I slammed it shut behind me and didn't leave again for 3 days. I kept catching glimpses of it. Not Evan, the other thing, the one that had followed him out of those woods. I'd see it crouched in the corner of my living room when lightning flashed, or reflected in the dark screen of my TV looming behind me. It never moved when I looked straight at it. Only when I turned away did I hear the soft scuttle of its limbs dragging closer. It began to whisper directly, not from closets or vents, but from inside my head. "You saw, you helped dig, you are ours now." I covered my ears. It made no difference. Tonight, The whispering is louder than ever. The coins are arranged around my bed in perfect spirals. I can't remember putting them there. My veins burn, pulsing under the skin, and sometimes I swear I feel tiny hands pushing up from inside. I've started writing this down because I know what comes next. Evan tried to warn me in his broken way. It was always going to come down to the same thing. I have a bus ticket back to Vermont, back to that rotting house, back to the well. I can feel it pulling at me even now, a low thrumming in my bones. I'm not sure if I'll ever be back, or if the thing that returns will still be me. I left off telling you about the moment I realized the house was alive, but the worst hadn't come yet. I wish it had ended there, with the creeping mildew on the walls, the murmur of voices beneath the floorboards, even the old VHS tapes repeating images of strangers who started to look more and more like me. Those would have been preferable. What came next was something I still struggle to believe I survived. After that night of scratching and whispering inside the walls, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, every lamp burning. I couldn't bring myself to go upstairs. The footage on the camcorder played again in my mind, the door opening by itself, the footsteps. My own face emerges in the grainy recording. Just before dawn, the lights went out. A soft click. Then darkness swallowed the living room whole. That's when I heard it. A long, low groan of wood and hinges. Not from above, not from the third floor, but from beneath me. I turned my head toward the kitchen and saw it. A door I hadn't noticed before, almost hidden behind a warped bookshelf. It must have been a storm cellar, but now it stood wide open, yawning black. From inside drifted a smell so foul it nearly knocked me over. Damp earth, Moldavian something worse, and beneath it all, the unmistakable copper tang of blood. I should have run. I should have grabbed my keys, kicked out a window, fled barefoot into the freezing night. But something pulled at me, not physically. It was deeper, like my bones were threaded to whatever waited below, and it was tugging. I found myself standing at the top of a steep, crumbling staircase. A cold draft rose to meet me, carrying faint whispers that sounded like my own name. I took a step, then another. My foot slipped on something slick. I caught myself, hand plunging into what felt like wet fur. I recoiled, heart racing. When I looked down, my phone's dim flashlight caught a smear of something dark on the wall. It was moving, slithering away like it didn't want to be seen. The steps ended in dirt. The cellar was more like a cavern, raw earth and jagged stone, and in the center was a pit, a perfect circle. Old bricks ringed its lip, a well. That was where the whispers came from, not echoing off walls but rising straight up from the throat of the earth. As I approached, the whispers grew clearer. They formed words, begged, taunted, promised. "It's waiting for you." Closer. I leaned over the edge. For a moment, there was only darkness. Then something shifted far below, catching the faint glow of my phone. It wasn't water. It wasn't even liquid. It looked like meat, moving, pulsing. It saw me. The whispers turned to a roar, rushing up the well through my chest, rattling my teeth. I staggered back, but something snared my ankle. Hands. Small, filthy hands, gripping, tugging. I screamed and kicked free. I ran, up the stairs, through the kitchen, into the living room. As I crossed the threshold, I heard a sound that will haunt me forever. A giggle, childlike, delighted. Then dozens more joined it, echoing up the stairwell, out of the cellar, inside the walls. I don't remember breaking the front door. I don't remember sprinting to my car or fishtailing down that narrow dirt drive. I only remember the trees flashing by, the house shrinking in my rearview mirror, the laughter still ringing in my ears. That was 3 days ago. I've tried to leave the state. Something always happens. A rock slide, a blown tire, a police blockade for some unnamed emergency. So I'm here, stuck in this motel, waiting for whatever is inside that house to come to finish what it started. Last night, I found dirt on my bed sheets, tiny handprints on the bathroom mirror. If you're hearing this, if you're watching, Don't go looking for Lakeview House. Don't chase solitude down winding roads past broken signs. Some places aren't abandoned because they were forgotten. They're abandoned because they were fed, and they're always hungry again. The lights just flickered. I can hear whispering outside my door. It's too late for me, but maybe not for you.